He's been standing at that door for 3 years. Does he ever do anything? You have no idea who you're looking at. Caden Holt had been guarding the east entrance of the Verith Coalition Embassy on Crossroads Station for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. And he knew the number because the contract renewed quarterly and he kept track. Not because the job required it, because keeping track of things was a habit he had developed a long time ago, in environments where losing track of things had consequences that were difficult to recover from. And the job itself was simple. Show up at the east entrance, check credentials, log arrivals and departures, escalate anything that required escalation, finish at 1800, go home, do it again. In 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days he had escalated 4 things, and 3 of them were minor: a credentialing error, a delivery vehicle with mismatched documentation, a visitor who had arrived at the wrong entrance and needed redirecting. The 4th he had handled himself quietly in under 30 seconds, and it had not appeared in any log because the person it involved had not wanted it logged, and Caden had agreed that was the correct call. Nobody at the embassy knew about the 4th one. That was also the correct call. He was by every visible measure unremarkable. Average height, average build, and the kind of face that was easy to look past in a crowd because it didn't announce itself. He wore the standard embassy security uniform, which fit him the way standard issue uniforms fit people who were not the exact dimensions the manufacturer had in mind adequately, without distinction. He said good morning to the staff who passed him every day and good evening when they left, and most of them said it back without looking at him directly, which was fine. The east entrance was not a place people looked at directly. It was a place they passed through. Caden was comfortable with that, and he had worked 17 different security postings before this one. Not all of them had been embassy work. Not all of them had been the kind of work that appeared on a standard employment record. What they had in common was that each one had required the same thing, the ability to be present without being noticed, to watch without looking like you were watching, and to know at any given moment exactly what was happening in the space you were responsible for and what it meant. The east entrance of the Verith Coalition Embassy was, by that measure, one of the better postings he had held. It was consistent. It had a clear perimeter. The people who passed through it every day were known quantities after the first few weeks, which meant that anything that didn't fit the established pattern was visible immediately to anyone paying the right kind of attention. Caden paid the right kind of attention. Welcome to HFY Universe. If you're watching this from your city, drop it in the comments below. I want to know where in the world this story is reaching tonight. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now because this one earns every minute of your time. Let's go back to the east entrance. The embassy occupied 4 floors of the station's diplomatic quarter, which was a section of Crossroads Station that had been specifically designed to handle the specific needs of multi-species governance, wider corridors for larger species, environmental controls that could be adjusted floor by floor, and security architecture that balanced accessibility with the kind of protection that embassies required when they were operating on a station that processed 3 million transient visitors per year. The east entrance was the staff entrance, not the public-facing main doors, which had a full security team and a visitor processing system and the kind of visible presence that communicated that this was an important place. The east entrance was for the people who worked there. It was quieter, less watched, the kind of entrance that, in security terms, was sometimes considered lower priority because the assumption was that staff had already been vetted. Caden had pointed this out in his first week, in a brief written note to the embassy's security coordinator. He had noted that the east entrance's lower traffic volume and reduced visibility made it, in his assessment, a higher risk point than its staffing level suggested. He had recommended 2 specific changes to the monitoring setup. The security coordinator had thanked him politely and implemented one of the 2 changes. The second one, Caden had quietly implemented himself over the following week using equipment he had sourced on his own time, without filing a request for reimbursement, because filing a request would have required an explanation that he didn't want to give. Body had noticed. That was also fine. The 4th escalation, the one that didn't appear in the log with any detail, had happened 8 months into his posting. A single individual, not 3, moving through the diplomatic quarter on a route that had no logical destination except the ambassador's schedule, which was not publicly available, and Caden had intercepted them in a stairwell. The conversation had been brief. The individual had left the station on the next available transport and had not returned. No report was filed because the ambassador, when Caden had informed her through a channel that didn't go through the security coordinator, had said that filing a report would create more visibility than the situation warranted, he had agreed. He had logged it as handled and resolved, no further detail, and gone back to the east entrance. And that was the morning he had started paying a different kind of attention to what time Ambassador Vell arrived. The ambassador's name was Sereth Vell. She was Veshan, mid-career, and with the precise and unhurried manner of someone who had spent 20 years in diplomatic work and had arrived at a place where she trusted her own judgment completely. She passed Caden every morning at 7:12, which was consistent enough that he had started anticipating it without intending to, and the way you anticipate anything that happens at the same time every day for 3 years. She said good morning. He said good morning. She went to her office. He went back to watching the entrance. This had been the entirety of their interaction for approximately 8 months, and at which point she had paused one morning, looked at him with the specific attention of someone noticing something for the first time that had been there for a while, and said, "You're always exactly on time." "Yes," he said. She had looked at him for a moment longer. Then she had gone to her office. And the next morning she said good morning, and he said good morning, and that was it again for another 4 months, until the morning she stopped again and said, "You've been here longer than any other contracted security staff we've had at this entrance." 3 years, he said, and a few months. "And do you like it?" she asked. The question had the quality of genuine curiosity rather than small talk. He thought about it for a moment. "It's a good entrance," he said. She had looked at him again with that specific attention. Then she had gone to her office, and he had not thought much about the conversations. Ambassadors made small talk with staff sometimes. It was part of the job of being an ambassador. Maintaining a functional environment required noticing the people in it, and he had worked for enough different kinds of organizations to recognize the difference between genuine interest and professional courtesy, and he had filed their brief exchanges under professional courtesy and left it there. He revised that filing later, after everything, and the attack happened on a Thursday, not a dramatic Thursday. Not a Thursday that had given any indication of being different from the 217 Thursdays before it that Caden had spent at the east entrance. The morning had been standard 14 staff arrivals between 0600 and 0900, and 2 delivery logs, 1 credential query that resolved itself when the visitor found their identification in a different pocket. Ambassador Vell had passed at 7:12 as usual. He had said good morning, and she had said good morning, and she had gone to her office. At 13:47, and 3 individuals entered the diplomatic quarter through a maintenance access point that was not the east entrance, using credentials that had been cloned from a legitimate contractor account with enough skill that the station's standard verification system had not flagged them, and they were carrying equipment that the maintenance contractor uniform made plausible. They moved with the specific purposeful efficiency of people who had a destination and a timeline, and Caden saw them on the secondary monitoring feed he had set up in his first week, the one that covered an angle the original system didn't. He saw them at 13:47. He noted the credentials, the pace, the equipment, and the specific way 2 of them were positioning relative to the third, which was not the way maintenance contractors moved when they were doing maintenance work. He logged the timestamp. He flagged the feed. He sent a single message to the embassy's internal security channel that said, "East Corridor, 3 individuals. Credentials require verification. I am responding." And then he moved. What happened in the next 28 seconds was documented by 4 different recording systems, the one Caden had installed, 2 station security feeds that covered the corridor, and the embassy's own internal system. And the documentation showed Caden entering the East Corridor at 13:47:32. It showed the 3 individuals at 13:47:35 when they became aware of him. It showed the exchange that followed, which lasted until 13:47:58, when station security arrived in response to the alert Caden had filed, and the recordings did not show everything clearly. The corridor lighting was standard, not designed for documentation quality, and Caden moved in ways that the camera angles were not positioned to capture completely. And what they showed clearly was the beginning 3 individuals turning toward him and the end 3 individuals on the floor. The 23 seconds in between were partially obscured by angles and movement, which was something the station security review team noted in their documentation and did not pursue further, because the outcome was not in dispute and the method had produced no casualties on any side. What the recordings did capture, clearly and from multiple angles, was Caden's posture in the 4 seconds between entering the corridor and the moment the 3 individuals turned toward him. He was walking at a normal pace, his hands were at his sides. His expression on the one camera that caught his face and was the same expression he wore every morning at the east entrance, present, attentive, unremarkable. He had not looked like a man walking toward a threat. He had looked like a man walking toward a thing that needed to be handled, and which was a distinction that the security team's lead officer had noted in her personal comment, and that she had not found a precise way to put into official language. Station security found 3 individuals secured on the corridor floor, none of them in a condition to move independently, and Caden standing with his back to the wall at the east entrance to the ambassador's office suite, which was where the 3 individuals had been heading. And the security team's lead officer later described the scene in her report as contained prior to our arrival by the contracted east entrance security personnel. She noted the 28-second time frame, she noted the condition of the 3 individuals, and she noted that the contracted personnel had sustained no injuries. She added a personal comment at the bottom of the report, which personal comments in official security reports were generally discouraged, that said, "and recommended reviewing contracted personnel's file before this contract comes up for renewal. I don't think we know what we have there." The 3 individuals were processed by station security. Their credentials were traced, and the operation they had been part of was identified and flagged for coalition intelligence, which was above Caden's pay grade and not something he was briefed on, which was also fine. Ambassador Vell had been in a meeting on the 2nd floor when the incident occurred. She was informed afterward, in her office, by the security coordinator. She listened to the full account, asked 3 questions, and then asked to see Caden. He came to her office at 15:30. Still in the security uniform. She was at her desk, and she looked at him with the specific attention she had been occasionally giving him for 3 years, except more of it, and with less of the professional courtesy framing. 28 seconds, she said. Yes, he said. The security team's response time was 4 minutes and 11 seconds. And you had the situation contained in 28 seconds. The response time was good, he said. 4 minutes is fast for an unscheduled alert. She studied him. You flagged the individuals before they reached the secure zone. The secondary feed caught them at the maintenance access point, he said. They moved like a team, not like contractors. How did you know the difference? Moment. Not the quiet of someone deciding whether to answer, but the quiet of someone deciding how much of an answer was actually useful.
I've seen both,
he said.
A lot of both.
And Sareth looked at him the way she had looked at him on the morning she had stopped to say something, that specific attention that he had filed under professional courtesy for 3 years and was now revising his filing on. Your contract file, she said. I read it this afternoon, after the incident. All right, he said. It's very short, she said. For someone with your obvious capability, it's an unusually short file. I know, he said. The previous employment section lists general security work, she said, outer settlements, various contracts. No specific employers named, and no specific location. Is it complete? He looked at her steadily. It's accurate, he said again, which was not quite the same answer. She held his gaze for a long moment. Outside her office window, Crossroads Station continued its ordinary operation, ships arriving and departing, 3 million people going about their days, the ordinary machinery of a busy station running exactly as it was supposed to. The 4th escalation, she said quietly. In your log. The one listed as handled and resolved, no further detail. He waited. That was 8 months ago, she said, 2 weeks before I started noticing you were always exactly on time. He said nothing. There was nothing to add to that. Was that one related to this? She asked. It was a preliminary, he said, someone checking sight lines, and I discouraged them from continuing. Sareth was quiet for a long moment outside. The station hummed. You've been watching this entrance for 3 years, she said, not because it's a good job. It's a good entrance, he said. I told you that. You told me it was a good entrance, she said, and you didn't tell me why you cared which entrance it was. He looked at her, she looked at him. Something settled in the room that had been taking its time getting there. I grew up on the outer reach, he said, 3rd-generation settlement, and the kind of place where you learn early that the things worth protecting don't always know they need protecting. And this embassy? She said. The work you do here, he said carefully, affects 41 systems. I looked it up in my first week. She was quiet for a long moment. The station hummed around them. The east entrance, 2 floors down, was being covered by a junior security staff member who had been called in when Caden had responded to the corridor incident, and who would, Caden noted internally, need a briefing on the secondary monitoring feed before his next shift. Your contract comes up for renewal in 6 weeks, Ambassador Vell said. Yes, he said. I'd like to discuss the terms, she said, before that happens. He looked at her with the same steady attention he had given everything for 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. I'm available, he said, and she nodded once. He left. The junior security staff member covering the east entrance during his absence had logged 2 arrivals and 1 departure correctly. Caden reviewed the log when he returned, noted that the secondary monitoring feed had not been checked once in the 90 minutes of coverage, and scheduled a briefing for the following morning. He went back to standing at the east entrance. The afternoon shift continued without incident. At 1800 he logged out, filed his end-of-day report. 14 arrivals, 2 delivery logs, 1 credential query, 1 incident flagged and resolved, 1 meeting with the ambassador, and left for the evening. On the transit back to his quarters he thought about the conversation. About the way she had said the file was short. About the way she had said it was accurate without asking if it was complete, and which meant she already understood that accurate and complete were not always the same thing. Which meant she had spent more time than he had realized thinking about the person who stood at her entrance every morning and said good morning and watched the door. He thought about the 41 systems, and he had looked that up in his first week, as he had told her, when he was building the picture of what the embassy actually was and what protecting it actually meant. 41 systems was not an abstract number when you had spent time on the outer reach, and where the decisions made in places like this one arrived slowly and with significant consequences for people who had no say in them. He had not taken the posting because it was available. He had taken it because of the 41 systems, and because the east entrance had the specific vulnerability he had identified, and because someone with his particular background was better placed to address that vulnerability than whoever had been standing there before him. He had not told anyone this, and it was not the kind of thing you put in an employment file. The contract renewal meeting happened 6 days before the expiration date. Ambassador Vell conducted it herself, which was not standard for contracted security staff, and which the security coordinator had noted with visible curiosity before being politely excluded from the meeting. The terms she proposed were different from the previous contract in 3 specific ways. Caden reviewed them and asked 2 questions about the reporting structure and accepted. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. Walking back to the east entrance afterward, he passed the security coordinator in the corridor, and she looked at him with the expression of someone who had decided they wanted to ask a question and had not yet figured out how to ask it. He said, "Good morning." She said, "Good morning." He went back to the entrance. The east entrance log for the following day showed the same entries as most days. 14 arrivals in the morning shift, 2 delivery logs, 1 credential query. Ambassador Vell at 07112, "Good morning, everything documented correctly." The secondary monitoring feed checked twice per hour. The entrance exactly as secure as it needed to be, and in ways that the log would never fully capture, by someone whose file was accurate and short and did not say nearly enough about what was actually standing at the door. That was always the job, and he was, by any measure that mattered, very good at it. That is the story for today. And drop a comment right now and tell me what city are you watching from tonight. I want to know where HFY Universe is reaching, and tell me this too. Did you figure out who Caden really was before the end, or did it catch you by surprise? If this story hit different for you, and share it with one person who loves sci-fi. One share means everything to a growing channel like this one. And if you are not yet subscribed to HFY Universe, do it right now. New stories every single week, and the next one is already being written. Until then, stay human, even when nobody knows what that means yet, especially then.